every song we pull for several thousand people in 6 countries, through sound out reports, which became fan reviews, and we have different other means. We consult with context, music supervision, because we want to make sure that as we move forward, yes, we're still happy with the songs that we're writing and that we love what the production is and everything we're doing as a team, but we also want to make sure that we're moving in a direction where we're achieving the commercial success so that we can actually afford to stay on these stages and afford to keep recording and do the thing that we love to do. So that's, it's become a rule of ours. Our unwritten rule, which we now kind of talk about and joke about with our contacts, is that it's 50% for us and then 50% for the listener. And that's why we're doing the polling and consulting so much to make sure that we're on the right path.
Hello, you beautiful music creatives. My name is Mac Boris, the founder of Musician Guidance, and it is my absolute privilege to welcome you all to the Musician Guidance podcast. Our guest today is the lead singer and guitarist of Hello Fiasco, a Canadian-American pop rock band that emerged publicly in 2021. The band's debut album, Find the Shoreline, has earned over 7 million streams, and their videos reaching well over 500,000 views on YouTube. On radio, the album is currently sitting at 40,000 trackable radio plays in over 40 countries worldwide, with several top 30s and number ones at US college stations. Without further ado, it is my honor to welcome Eric LaBossiere to the podcast. Eric, you're looking great as always. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having us on the show, Mac. And you're looking great too.
I appreciate the kind words. I made sure to look my best for today's episode because I have had the opportunity to, see Hello Fiasco live, putting on a killer show a couple of weeks ago, and now having you here to chat is super exciting. So I definitely wanted to look my best. And I do look forward to this episode and hearing all about yourself and Hello Fiasco, the recording of Find the Shoreline, and so much more. Just to kick us off here, Eric, tell me a little bit about your story and how you got into music.
You bet. So I grew up in Winnipeg on the Canadian side, even though I live on the US side now. And in Winnipeg, as you know, we have a large music community, whether that's the French or the English or whatever side of it is, the Métis, which we have a lot of in our band. And so I grew up in music because part of my family was in music. The Paquet side of the family were all singers, some involved with the Festival du Voyageur that we just played at, and some of the LaBossiere family as well. So long story short, I was always around music. And then one day in grade 6, I decided, after hearing a person come to our school and say, hey, we're going to try to convince you guys to choose guitar as your elective. I heard a gentleman play Stairway to Heaven on a classical guitar. It was amazing, mind-blowing to me at the end of grade 6, I believe it was. And then in grade 7, I enrolled in guitar, and then the rest is history. I started guitar, did that for several years, started to have the confidence to try and sing in front of people. In other words, I wasn't classically trained as a kid and didn't take lessons right away. And then I started hacking it out singing and developed that over the time. And that's how I got into music and where my beginnings started.
That's awesome. And was there, a time in your life where you decided like this is what I want to do, forever? You mentioned, grade 7 is kind of when you got introduced to it. Was there something about it that just made you absolutely fall in love with it, and at a certain time you knew that you just had to do this?
Yeah, I think there were actually 2 moments for me. I somewhere around grade 10, pretty sure that's when it was. I was advancing a lot in guitar because I spent hours doing it, whereas some of the other kids that I was learning with didn't. And I was asked to go do a classical piece in front of our high school at the time. And so I
Right
don't know,
on.
there was like 500 kids in the room, and I did this crazy classical piece of arpeggios. And I remember the response of the crowd, and I was actually shocked that when I stopped playing, there was silence for a couple of seconds, and the crowd responded, and I was like, whoa. And that was pretty amazing to me. And then the next couple of years, I had a little bit more confidence, and even though I was starting to work in a band, I decided to go write the song and approach the school about writing the song for our graduation. And so I wrote the song and performed it live, which wasn't that great back then, but it's a different story. And I did it with my friend Chris. He did the piano, and then another gentleman wanted to learn guitar at the same time, and he played on the track with me. So there were 3 of us that did the grad song, and that was the moment that I decided, okay, even though it might not have been great, I think this is what I want to do moving forward, like for good. And so even though I went to college, university, and did all these different things, I knew that was when I wanted to do it forever. So
That's awesome. And hey, the first time's never the best, but I'm glad that it hooked you because as a fan, I'm glad that it did. And as I mentioned in the
great.
intro, Hello Fiasco publicly, emerged in 2021. So basically, while I was watching 90 Day Fiancé and eating ice cream in bed with a mask on, yourself, and the rest of the band members, a part of Hello Fiasco, were working behind the scenes on this fantastic album. With yourself residing in Montana, I believe, during this, and the rest of the band in Winnipeg with a closed border, how did that affect you?
Majorly is the short answer. Could you imagine we had actually started working on Hello Fiasco in about 2016, secretly recording and
Oh,
stuff,
wow.
and did a whole bunch of songs over time. But what happened was we decided to release things right as COVID was happening, which ruined our first shows, changed everything, our release date, made all kinds of complications. And the last couple of songs of the record that we had planned on, which we only ended up keeping one of them, we had to record in the two countries because I literally couldn't cross the border. So Before Time Leaves You, which was the last track we added to this record, and I can't picture the record without it, was recorded in a little studio in Helena where I met some great people randomly in Helena. I was forwarded to these people I'd never met. And I'm not a person who just walks in any studio to record, even though I used to do that years ago. And so I met Lenny Eckert and Sea Lanketh Sound, Dead Dinosaur Productions, and we recorded the acoustic and the vocal for Before Time Leaves You in Helena. And then because of email, listen to all these different softwares and programs of today, we were able to send everything over, obviously, to Winnipeg, which is pretty simple to do. However, I was able to listen in on sessions, but I had no control over it. And JP reined in the guys, John Paul Peters, our producer, and they recorded without me. And in the end, we decided, Eric, you're not even involved in this part of the session, which was a great learning experience. They recorded everything over there. And then one day I got to hear the song, what it sounded like, which was pretty crazy to not record it with your band.
Sure.
And yeah, so we had to make different changes, just like everybody else did during COVID. And then we finally got back to shows this last year here, even though touring is quite a bit affected still by COVID to this day because of venue closures and all kinds of stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And with COVID behind us now, what is the process like? Are you still recording remotely?
No, we're recording together, even though we can easily record remotely now that we've done it, and lots of bands have had to do over time.
Hmm.
We record together in Winnipeg, so I'm down there from between 6 and 9 times a year. I'm in Winnipeg recording. This last year, we recorded 7 tracks for our next record coming out, and we do it all together, just like we did before COVID.
Are those during the winter months, summer months? When are you strategically
Whenever it
plan?
is,
Okay.
I'm used to a long life of driving Manitoba roads and all of Canada, of course, because of previous business
Hmm.
and touring. And so yeah, we record whenever the schedule says. That's when we record. We don't care about weather, rain or shine. We record, and I go
I
up there and
like it.
do the 15 and a half hour drive is what it is for me if I
You're
want to bring my
driving up
instruments.
here.
Yeah, and if I fly, then it's a few minutes, but driving is 15 and a half hours with all the gear. A lot of fun.
I can imagine. I would assume it's not the most scenic route. Am I right in saying that?
The first 4 hours are beautiful. The rest is North Dakota, a little bit of Minnesota and Manitoba, and that's all I'm going to say.
Sure, the audience can kind of piece the rest of that together after the first
That's
couple
right.
hours there. Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about Find the Shoreline, your 12-song album. Tell me a little bit about the album and then where the ideas and stories found in the lyrics come from.
Right. So the album was actually recorded. The initial recordings were all done between 2016 until 2020. And then we spent some good time mixing and polling because we wanted to make sure we took this more seriously than our previous project, the Mailmans Children. And so we cut it from those 12 songs. The 12 songs that we ended up picking, when we looked at which ones went over better with either initial fans or people that we had polled or our contacts, they were all songs that had very, they were very similar. They were similar in how they were written, the lyrics. And so the lyrics on this record for me are very personal. A lot of them tie into the lives of the band. But in the past, I used to write third-party songs. I used to write from a position of narrative and telling the stories of other people's lives or recounting stories of others' lives. And as you get older, you get more confidence. You're not as afraid to share your personal life and your personal experience or the stories of the band. And so Find the Shoreline is a collection of songs that all somehow tie into our personal lives, which is why we feel like the record's gone over so well. It's a lot more relatable to people in the style that yes, it's our story, but we make sure that we're sharing it with the people and making a story that's relatable to them, whether that's Before Time Leaves You, which we can all relate to, or whatever song it is on the record. So that's a little bit about Find the Shoreline. There's stories that are personal, and the record title comes from directly making sure that we wanted to communicate that that we're in pursuit of something bigger, and recognizing that the band had a lot of struggles these last years in forming. We had to take on a couple of new players. We had to make a lot of changes from what we had done previously, which three of us used to be in the Mailmans Children. And so Find the Shoreline is about getting there and making it to a point where we're happy that we got through the struggle and we've created this great record. And we find that with this record, we have achieved that. And, it's the first shoreline that we've hit, and there's going to be a lot more shorelines, but that's where the record comes from.
That's awesome. And you mentioned that three members were in, the Mailman's Children. How much inspiration did you take from that band, when forming Hello Fiasco?
I would say quite a bit. I'm not sure everybody's sold on that.
Why is
So
that?
Joe, Joe, our bassist, Joel Couture, and the other Joe Perot, our guitarist. Um, the three of us, we played in the Mailman's Children for several years. We released a few albums, and we were a little bit more progressive, a little bit more offshoot of pop rock. We were a little bit more on the alternative side at times. In other words, we were a melee and very eclectic. And even though some people might still say that about Hello Fiasco, the reality is we've moved on from that. We've progressed from that. We're trying to make sure that we focus on more of a pop rock medium that's more accessible for more fans and being on bigger stages, and gets us a little bit more of what we want out of music without selling out. In other words, we do it more for the listener now than we used to, and general listener. And so what we did take from the Mailman's Children, I would say, is the same basic theme of making songs that we do try to love together and finding a space for everybody in that song. The difference is, though, the songs are now all 3 minutes because we're doing the pop rock deal. And so that makes it tougher a little bit for some of the guys in the band, is what I'm getting at, because we do have to find our space and we have to work that out in the studio. We have to have late night calls about it and figure it all out, so that when we are on stage, we know it's a song we actually like to play as well as hear it on the recording. So that's what we've tried to take from the Mailman's Children, is sticking to making sure everybody still loves the song, making sure that everybody finds their space and they're happy with what they're playing. But at the same rate, we've made some business decisions to get us further ahead in music, right?
Absolutely. And that's the most important part, I think. Sticking true to your sound and your belief and your stories, but at the same time, commercializing it, so to speak. So it's not too, individual. And with that, I asked this earlier. I'm going to get you to touch on a few in particular, a few songs in particular. You mentioned that they're all very, personal. Can I get you to touch on your lead too, Gorgeous Girl and Hold Me Close? Bring us kind of behind the scenes. What are those two songs about? What do they mean? What would you like others to take away from them?
Right. Well, they're two totally different beasts. So Gorgeous Girl was actually written quite a while before we started Hello Fiasco. There's two songs on the record. Like Trust is one where we had stolen some guitar from years ago. Worried Sick is one, like if we look at a whole song that we had written years ago, and it's interesting how full life and full circle comes around and teaches you lessons. So Worried Sick has taken on a different meaning with Hello Fiasco than when we were a little bit younger. And Gorgeous Girl is the other one that we'd written before, which, some people will call cheeky, a little bit controversial, even though that was never the intention with that song. And so those are songs that we carried forward, and that the meanings, like in the values to us, it's more of like a memory. It's more of like, this is a great memory of the past and the Mailman's Children that we've brought to Hello Fiasco, not necessarily meaning or value for me or for Joe or Guy. But if
Right.
we look at the songs and the value, Hold Me Close is simply, it's something that I saw in my personal life between my friends, my family, and also that I want to, as a reminder to myself, to make sure that I don't fall into the trap of not respecting the person I'm with in terms of relationship and keeping it alive and keeping it exciting and going out and doing things, whether it's going to a movie or going out to a restaurant or whatever it is. And so during COVID, it became extremely apparent. That song was written just before COVID. And in
Mm.
COVID, it became extremely meaningful to me and a couple of guys in the band because we were all locked inside with our loved ones and trapped for a while, to the point of where it got a little bit annoying sometimes, and it was an unnatural situation for all of us. So we made the video to kind of follow that idea of COVID, while at the same time, um, sticking to the meaning of the song so that everybody can relate to it. And Gorgeous Girl, not that I don't respect my own song and love it to death, because every time I play it, you'll see me smile on stage and I have a good laugh. But we wrote that a little bit before more serious relationships in our lives and stuff. And so Gorgeous Girl, it's a great memory and great fun for us to play it, but it's not necessarily something of high value because of what we're talking about, the advantages of being a gorgeous girl, which some of us can relate to. So they're two totally different things, like I was mentioning, right? It's great.
Hmm. Yeah, totally different indeed. And that's the great thing about Hello Fiasco. You have diversity. I've noticed that you've made a niche of acoustic songs with Before Time Leaves You and Trust, but you also have rock songs with Gorgeous Girl and Hold Me Close. Is there one you prefer?
That's a good question. I think I prefer each of them when I'm playing them, is what happens. Like whenever we're on stage and we play, for instance, Before Time Leaves You, Words Are Fast, Trust, or Atlantis Incompatible with Aaron Prop. These are all more acoustic driven and based songs. And I love those moments because they're different.
Hmm.
But there's nothing like rocking out, whether it's doing Hold Me Close or Worried Sick, or even a Killers or Muse cover like we do. So both worlds are amazing. And the one thing I'll tell you is I am learning between the two worlds is it doesn't matter which song it is. When I write it, I have to be able to play it sitting down with my classical guitar first, then my acoustic, then my electric, meaning on all levels. And you'll hear this lots through the ages and through all producers and musicians. The reality is there's a certain point in life you figure out, if your song is good at home sitting down, it's going to be good on stage as well. And so it doesn't matter if it's the acoustic or the rock world. That's kind of the rule that I follow now, to make sure that no matter how I play it, I'm going to love this song. So whether I even have a guitar in my hands or not, if I can sing it in the shower.
Hey, the shower and the car are the two best stages.
Very
Hey?
important.
You know it. Are there, people and artists and bands before, you guys that have really helped shape your music and that you've kind of inspired to be?
Yes, absolutely. I wish that Guy was here for this part. I wish that Joe and Joe were here for this part, because they have all their different influences.
Mm.
Like Guy and I both love Radiohead or Coldplay. Joe P has a whole wide range of people, from Feist to Annie DeFranco that he loves, to all kinds of stuff. Joe C loves Billy Joel. Like he won't stop on the Billy Joel or the Strokes or the Killers. And Joe and I have that connection of Killers. So what happens is that all of us have our own influences. But if we look at me, I have influences that directly line up. Like with Joe Pro and I, we have a connection on Pearl Jam, and Guy and I, again, Radiohead. So for me, like in the acoustic world, it's funny you mentioned acoustic on the last question. I love, and I grew up listening to Jim Croce, Paul Simon, Simon & Garfunkel, obviously, Harry Chapin, and all these different people, and Andy DeFranco, like Joe P. And then on the electric world, I absolutely love, some of the people I listened to early on, anything from Bryan Adams and Billy Idol, became later on the Killers and
Mhm.
Muse and Coldplay. And so these are all big influences of mine that also transcended the band, because obviously a lot of us are going to have common influences, right?
Sure. And I know, Eric, behind the music, you are a very smart man. You're making business decisions, and with that, you're utilizing polling and surveys. And I know that you mentioned before that through those surveys, some of the people have compared you to, some of the legends that you just mentioned. How does that feel?
Amazing, and humbling. I mean, when we did our initial polling a few years ago for this record, for instance, we heard crazy stuff that we wouldn't have believed. Some people actually thought they were hiding Panic at the Disco songs under the name Hello Fiasco, because apparently I sound so much like Brendan Urie at times with phrasing of my vocals and lyrics. And then we got a lot of comparisons of Fall Out Boy and Franz Ferdinand, some killers, and then also David Bowie, Joe Cocker on the other side of the spectrum. And these are pretty amazing things for us as a band because those comparisons didn't happen before between any community we did ask about our music. It was more like, we don't know what you guys are, but Hello Fiasco, we're pretty clear on the fact that you're on a pop rock vein. And to go back to the polling and the market study and all that, there's definitely a business aspect to this, no matter what anybody says. It's just a choice of whether you want to do the business aspect or not. And before 5 years ago, about 5, 6 years ago, I would have said that we would have hidden that business aspect or we would have avoided it. And it's still not easy for some of the guys in the band, which is why Joe and I currently run this part of the business, meaning market study and all that. But every song we pull for several thousand people in 6 countries through Sound Out Reports, which became fan reviews, and we have different other means. We consult with Context, music supervision, because we want to make sure that as we move forward, yes, we're still happy with the songs that we're writing and that we love that what the production is and everything we're doing as a team, but we also want to make sure that we're moving in a direction where we're achieving the commercial success so that we can actually afford to stay on these stages and afford to keep recording and do the thing that we love to do. So that's, it's become a rule of ours. Our unwritten rule, which we now kind of talk about and joke about with our contacts, is that it's 50% for us and then 50% for the listener. And that's why we're doing the polling and consulting so much to make sure that we're on the right path.
I appreciate you saying that because it's so important, but I agree with you. Nobody wants to talk about that. But like if you look at, Ed Sheeran, if you look at Taylor Swift, if you look at just the biggest artists of the day and you like look at the ads they're running and the budgets they're spending, like they're spending, I think it's, I know some, I'm not going to name their names, but I know they're spending $15,000 a day on PR alone. Then they're spending more on, Spotify playlisting and stuff like that, then more on Facebook ads to sell gigs. And before they're spending those millions of dollars, they're doing research. And I think there's this misconception that if you are marketing, if you are learning about who your audience is, that you're being inauthentic. But I think it's actually quite the opposite. You're still creating music you love. You're just ensuring that you're delivering it to your audience basically in a way that they want to receive it. And it's therefore benefiting you because you're getting what you believe to be, personal to yourself, etc., to an audience that is going to love it. So I really appreciate you sharing that as well.
I kind of look at it now at this point, like if you write 20, in our case, we'd written 23 songs in just to start the record off. And now we've written a bunch more for our second album and we have B-sides sitting there that we can use. But the reality is if you look at a batch of 23 songs and you're picking the 11 that people don't like, what are you doing? Like, are you actually being smart or are you being stubborn, right? So it's a tough call. Some people still do business that way or run their band that way, I should say, because that's not business. And we've just chosen to take a different path now at this point because we used to be those people that didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two types of, musicians, I think. Those that want to put out music for the sake of it, which is totally okay. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you are wanting to make a career out of this, it is important then to leverage and learn the business side of it. Before I get too far ahead of myself here, you mentioned you mentioned Panic at the Disco right there that people are thinking Hello Fiasco is kind of behind or a part of, and that is, I mean, I know you mentioned earlier too, growing up, you maybe didn't have the most confidence in the world. And I know you're, hard on yourself about your voice sometimes and continuing to make waves in this business. So to hear that and knowing that everything is, going well for yourself now, looking back on a younger Eric, grade 7 or grade 10, you mentioned, what would you tell a younger version of yourself to work on with whether that's your vocals, your health, training, or even, getting up in front of a crowd and being able to handle, the unknown of what might happen on stage?
Right. I wish I had a lot of the people who gave me advice. I wish I had them on the call right now to share it. But I remember there's a great musician in Winnipeg. His name is Aaron Peters, and I used to work with him. But then one day I realized, oh my God, this guy plays music. He's amazing. And he told me one day, because he saw me, struggling, and asked him, what is it that you do to have such a strong voice, Aaron? And he said, Eric, you just sing every day. Don't, if you're not going to go do instruction, if you're not going to buy lessons, if you're not going to learn it until you go do those things, why don't you just sing every single day, and you'll wake up one day and you'll realize you can do this thing. And so I started making it my rule that I sing a little bit every day. I sing in the shower, I sing in the car, I sing all the time. And, in the last 10 years, I've taken that to the nines, doing hours of it. So my first piece of advice on the vocal side of thing is literally just sing every day. Even if you're not going to go get lessons right away or vocal coaching or do all these things you need to do, as I started to do over the years, like I should have early on, just sing every day. And one day you'll wake up and realize it's not just about being born with a God-given talent. It's not just about natural talent. You can actually develop these things, and you can do whatever you believe you want to do, which is why right now our big theme in the band is impossible is possible.
Right
So
on.
that's the biggest piece of advice I would have on getting going on your voice and believing in your confidence.
Let's touch on that a little more too. When you say, just sing every day, are you singing the same songs? Are you singing the same genre? Are you diversifying it and just experimenting basically?
Right. So it depends what you want to do. Some people just want to sing and they don't care who writes the song. I have good friends that are having high success right now, and people don't realize they don't write any of their songs. So if you want to do that, you need to write X amount of songs and just fail constantly, because they're not going to be good in the beginning, no matter what anybody tells you. And if you want to be, let's say, a big pop singer, whatever you want to do, well, it doesn't matter which one of the two. You need to sing whatever you can sing. So if you're not singing your own songs, you need to sing everything that pushes you to the limit. In other words, you don't want to sing stuff in your comfort zone like I used to do in the beginning. You need to take on, let's say, a crazy, for me right now, my fun game is I Want to Know What Love Is, because it's got the two high notes that break me, from Foreigner. And so you need to always be moving a little bit ahead and taking a song that challenges you more and more every single time. Do not just do what's in your comfort zone, like simple little acoustic songs. For instance, for me in the beginning, you need to be pushing your voice without breaking it, without destroying it, without getting vocal nodes. You need to just keep pushing your voice every single day and singing new songs every day.
It's the age-old saying, practice makes perfect, right?
Right.
It's put in the 10,000 hours, right?
That's right.
Put in the
Outliers.
10,000. Yeah, exactly. How about getting up in front of a crowd? That's something that is just daunting for musicians, for anybody, just getting up there, but especially for musicians because they are sharing what is often very personal to them. Maybe it's a song they wrote that they're sharing with the crowd. They have no idea how the crowd's going to react to it. They're being vulnerable. Do you have any advice kind of on overcoming stage fright?
Yeah, there's kind of two parts to that. The first thing I would say is, yeah, no matter what I say, or no matter what I tell the guys, I kind of know that as the, well, say the quote unquote leader of the band walking up on the stage sometimes, even though I look at it like we're a team every day. Um, I've told them clearly, and that they've questioned me on it, that are you sure you're not nervous or whatever it is? And because of years of not just doing music, but the other business I did for years, I would speak in front of people, public speaking for years and years, and sales, marketing, and all kinds of stuff. I've gotten to a point now where I'm completely relaxed up there when I get up there. However, I do still worry about technical things I know going on with that sound system or with our band or whatever it is. So my worries are unfortunately no longer the crowd or whatever it is, but this, you're still going to have some anxious tension about it. But what I did to get rid of over my general nervousness is just get up in front of people. And the easiest suggestion I can make to people is get out to coffee shops and get out to open mic nights and get out to karaoke bars. Those are probably the best moves, whether you're a guitarist, singer, whatever it is. You just find your local coffee houses, open mic nights, and again, karaoke if you're a singer, and just have fun with it. People at these shows are not there to kill you. They're there to, because they genuinely enjoy music or they just want to sing. And people have always talked about, you look over the crowd, you do this, you do that. I don't really subscribe to that or believe in that, because what it's a matter of is just going to do it. Action cures fears. You have to just get out there and go and get on stage. And so you start out with as many small stages as you can. And the biggest thing for me that helped me the most was the day I decided years ago, I'm going to call up friends, I'm going to call up family, and I'm going to annoy them in the beginning, but as you get better, it gets better. And I'm going to literally say, hey, I'm just going to play a song for you. And in the beginning, it was a little bit weird. People were like, what the heck? But then they started to enjoy it. Sometimes they call and make requests. They think it's funny. And you'll see that if you have the confidence to play in front of your parents or your family or your friends, and this last year, I kind of shocked my co-producer, John Paul Peters, because my aunt had flown in from British Columbia to see our show. And at the same time, I was doing tracking the month before. And I actually had my mother and my aunt come to a session and watch me track the vocals for this new song, X-Ray. And he was like, "What the heck, Eric?" And I'm like, "Hey man, if I can't play this, if I can't sing with confidence in front of my mother, how am I going to sing in front of 20,000 people?"
Mhm.
And this is kind of the rule you need to follow, is just play for anybody and everybody you can. I don't care if it's on a park bench in a park, but the most important thing that'll make you feel confidence is if you can play for your friends and family, you can play for anybody. That's my big rule these last years.
I totally agree. And that's consistent with what I've heard from other artists. They're like, they get more nervous playing to, five friends than they do to a stadium of tens of thousands.
That's right.
Yeah, no, great advice. I want to touch on something too. Um, I recently saw, as I mentioned in the introduction, Hello Fiasco put on a fantastic show. If you weren't there, you
Great.
missed out. Glow sticks, killing it on stage, and the like. Around that time, though, I heard a rumor that a virus was going around and it was taking a lot of people's voices, including your own. Is that true? And if so,
Uh,
what was recovery like in time for that show?
Yeah, it's true. Right now we're not doing a lot of shows year round because of our situation with recording our second album, and we're getting ready for bigger touring, which means you need all kinds of pieces in a team, especially when you're indie. And so we have the last 3 years we've played the Festival du Voyageur in Winnipeg, and so you know I knew that the show was coming up in a month and a half, and a month and a half before the show, I randomly caught an illness after being sick twice because there was, as you know, this year was crazy with viruses on the side from COVID and whatnot. And I got some random virus. And when our family checked on it, because we all got it, they said, "Yeah, this is the one that goes for about 8 weeks." And I had a show coming up right away. And what happened to me was I couldn't believe it, but I had to literally stop doing other business. I had to stop doing most calls, any interviews for the band, because I completely lost my voice. Not just lost it, but like I couldn't sing a note, couldn't sing a note of falsetto. I couldn't sing lightheaded voice. I couldn't sing chest, full voice, no belting for sure. There was nothing. Literally, there was no possibility of tracking or playing at a time when I needed to be getting in shape. And I believe in getting in shape way in advance before every show so that vocals are powerful as a lead instrument for the band. And I lost my voice for 3.5 weeks, and it was pretty scary stuff. And I didn't tell the guys at first. I finally told Joe because he's my business partner. And then a few weeks before the show, I started singing a tiny bit every day, and I had to like ramp up every single day till the show. And I got to the first rehearsal, and I didn't tell the guys. I was in so much pain because that night I was belting finally, and it was killing me. And then by the second rehearsal, we had taken a day break after I slowly recovered and got better every day until the show, and I pulled it off. But I had to hide a couple of falsettos because I still couldn't even do them at the show. There was a couple where I'm like, Aaron Proper joined us. I'm like, "Can you sing these for me?" So
Interesting.
I cheated a little bit at the show. It is what it is.
You could have got away with that.
Good.
We were having a good time, wouldn't have even noticed. Was there a time though you thought like, dang, like I might have to cancel this show?
Yep. There was about 3 weeks in. I'm like, I just don't know. And I told a few friends, I don't know if I can do this. And I just kept, exercising and training and breathing and drinking tea and water and doing all the things I needed to. And finally it started to come back a little bit. And I remember the day I'm like, I was in the shower and I'd just woken up and I'm like, okay, I can hear three mid notes now. I'm like, this is a good sign. So if you can believe that's where it started. And
Wow.
then I'm like, I need to do this. It's going to happen. And I just kept focusing on the date, and there it was.
Well, I'm happy it all worked out because, like I've mentioned a few times, amazing show. And speaking of performing, I have to know, Eric, do you have any pre-show superstitions? So before you're getting on
Mm.
stage, are you spinning around 3 times? Are you doing anything crazy like that?
Yeah, it's funny. I do there's no superstition here, but my tradition is that I drink a ton of water until 1 hour before the show. Like I was taught by a couple of great friends and musicians, including Mark Reeves. from back in the day when I was first learning what to do and not to do before a show. So these are like just, things. And then I do just over an hour long warm up, and then I take a break and then I'll sing a couple of takes from songs a cappella. And then what happens is that I've realized that I pace a good amount, but not like weird pacing, like back and forth. I just have to like walk around in emotion when I'm doing the final part of my warm up because I know it's almost game time and I want to make sure the blood's flowing and I'm ready. And that's pretty much it. I don't have any like weird ticks or habits, and I think I've got a pretty sullen look on my face before, and I'm just like focused on game time. That's about it.
Locked and loaded. I like it. Are you
Yeah.
wearing a Fitbit though? Like how many steps are we talking before you're getting on
Yeah,
stage?
no.
No, no
It's a lot of
Fitbit.
steps though. It's a
So
lot. Slow
more
and
before
methodical.
than on the stage, do you think?
That's right. Yeah, it's more before than on the stage, unfortunately. I should be running around the stage more.
No, no, no. Practice, right? You go harder
Yeah,
in
totally.
practice, right? It's like hockey players. Sometimes they use a heavier puck in practices. So when
My
they get out,
excuse is I have to sing.
yeah, there you go. I appreciate you sharing guidance throughout this, Eric, because that is what our company is all about. So I'm going to get you to share a little more too. You've been in this industry for a while and you know what it takes, to succeed, evident with what Hello Fiasco has already achieved. So for those that are wanting to follow in similar footsteps, what goes on behind the record? So,
Yeah.
you're making Find the Shoreline. We hear the music, amazing, love it. But what are we not seeing that has helped lead towards its success?
Well, what we're not seeing and that doesn't get talked about enough is pretty scary stuff. Number one, money. So,
Sure.
when you hear interviews from a lot of people that just say it the way it is, you need to make sure if you want to run a band, if you want to have a solo career, whatever you want to do, you need money behind it no matter what anybody says. Yes, you can get lucky. There's those small chances that you might get lucky and run into somebody who helps you go, or you might get funding along the way. And some people have succeeded that way, but the general population, number one, needs money. They need to either have a side thing that makes a lot of money, which is what I would go after if they can, to generate income for their music business. And I say this because there's been recent articles and studies that all indicate that if you're not on a major label, you or your family or your team or your band would need around $300,000 to $500,000 to ensure that you can pull this game off. That's on that side, and I can tell you that Hello Fiasco has spent a lot of money as a band on achieving what we have so far, and we're going to spend a lot more to do the final steps of wherever it is that we're going to go. And the second thing is, when it comes to a band, you need to look at it like 50% music, 50% business, or some people will tell you 90% business, 10% music. In other words, if you have the music, everything else needs to be business.
Hmm.
And so whatever percentage that is, it doesn't matter. But if you ask me, the biggest, where you're spending your money, where you're allocating your time, obviously a ton of it needs to be on research, so you figure out where you need to go, because there are not people that are just going to walk up and say, I'm going to teach you everything. It just doesn't work that way. You need to go out there and find mentors and contacts if you're not going to figure out the business side, who will do it for you. If you're going to do it yourself and do DIY, which now, as we know, whereas in the past it used to be more of the musicians that succeeded were on major labels, well, a lot of them now are, it's flipping because of 360 deals and things. A lot of musicians are doing indie, and I have no comment on that. But what I will tell you, if you're going to be indie and you're going to do it yourself, you can bet you better max out your ability to learn marketing and promotions and sales for your band. Find the guys in the band or the people around you, your friends that want to do that with you,
Yeah.
and do a ton of social media. Like, whether it's the dollars you spend or the time on it, and make sure that you do a ton of pushing on radio. Find the companies that will hook you up with radio, push a ton. And I mean, radio, when I say that, we're talking whether it's internet, satellite, whether it's XM, whether it's AM, FM. Internet radio is a major player now. So whatever it is that you're going to do, you need to push on those categories. A ton of marketing, a ton of the stuff I mentioned earlier, like polling, to make sure that, hey, this is actually going to go over well, whether you pay dollars to poll or actually meet music supervisors that are known, or contacts that are known, that can tell you to your face, this is what you need to work on, this is what you need to do to meet people in the middle. So those are some of the major things. But on the other side, of business is copyright, trademark, and starting a label and a publishing company. And I cannot tell you how much that's changed for our band. We were very fortunate and blessed to have, I kept pushing for contacts, and one of them that I landed on that actually took us on as he was retiring was Elliot Kahn, who used to play in the Shana Nas. He's done Woodstock. He was, one of Green Day's first major managers. He's done contracts for all these people. And so I asked him to help me. I begged him, I should say, to help me and convinced him to help me build Hello Fiasco. And so he helped us build our label, our publishing company, did all kinds of other stuff with me. And then I met other great people that helped out with trademark and copyright as well, and registration. It's doing all the legal things that matter for band. Now, most musicians on average don't want to deal with that. But if you're going to take that on indie, you need to actually do those things. If you're not going to take them on, you need to find somebody else to do it for and with you. And you're going to have to pay those people. You can't just expect them to do it for free, whether they take almost all of your money or whether they, meaning that you're going to earn, or whether you pay them to actually do it. And so you have to make those choices. And business is everything in music, no matter what anybody tells you. Yeah, we want to have fun and be on stage and record and tour, but there's only you got to do all the work and live through the pain to get to the minutes where we get to play. It's how it works.
Very well said. I like the authenticity in that reply. One thing I want to ask, because I get this question literally all the time, is why would I do radio? Radio's dead. Nobody listens to the radio anymore.
Mhm.
What's your reply?
Are you saying why I would do radio? Why I would, what are you saying exactly?
Yeah, so artists will always come to me and they're like, I want to focus on Spotify. I want to focus on Apple Music. I want to get my, followers up. To me, I don't need to get on the radio because nobody listens to the radio anymore. That's what, they're coming to me saying. But radio is actually extremely beneficial still. And I know it's something that you've been able to do quite effectively, get on radio stations and all that. Are you able to just touch on kind of the benefits of it too that a lot of artists are overseeing?
Right. I just, I've heard this myth and this legend and this story that radio is dead, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And the numbers are still there, massive.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I still get in the car and listen to XM all the time, which is radio. A lot of people look at it like, well, AM, FM, and all that is all different. But in the end, there are millions and millions of listeners still. And what do you think those people are going to do? Well, those people are going to hear you on radio once, like the song, and then they're going to go stream you, or they're going to go look at your video on YouTube, whatever it is. So we make sure that we do put a lot of dollars into radio still, and everybody that I know that is succeeding to any degree, that's what they go after, as well as the streaming, obviously, and everything else, because it's what gives you more streaming, and it's what gets you known out there for touring and all these different things.
Absolutely. I kind of want to add one thing here too, which is I'm seeing a lot of artists, and I hate to generalize it, but I do see a lot of them where they jump to conclusions. And whether that's radio is dead or nobody buys vinyl anymore when it's increased, I think it's 16 or 17 years in a row now it's grown. And going back to what you said about the importance of just research and like you might make great music, but that doesn't mean you're maybe the best marketer or the best, researcher. So like what I would say is just don't jump to conclusions and really put in, as Eric mentioned, the time, money, and resources to find out what is going to be best for you. Because yes, it could be expensive. Yes, it could take a lot of your time, but at the end of the day, it is a business. And whether that split is 50-50, 90-10, it does take both parts. So I appreciate what you've shared there, Eric. I want to move on kind of to the kind of last segment of this episode. We talked a lot about, find the shoreline, which is fantastic. I want to ask you, is there anything Hello Fiasco is working on that you can announce?
Yeah, there's lots of stuff. I mean, I don't even know where to start because we're working on so many different things. But one that we're really excited about, which we can announce now, is that recently John Paul Peters and the band and myself, we've always co-produced together the first album and the beginning of the second album. And due to circumstances and meeting more and more people and getting opportunities, an exciting one in recording land is that we're now recording our first track, and we're going to be recording more with him. But we're recording with Bruce Lowe, who has achieved all kinds of crazy things in his lifetime and worked with the best of the best. And he's got Grammys and all kinds of stuff. And he works directly with Warner Brothers Pictures on his on film and for TV, and I mean, sorry, on music for film and TV and all these different things. And so we're very blessed. We're recording a track called Impossible is Possible with Bruce now. We're going to be recording more with him. I'm actually, today as we speak, our interview is scheduled on the day that the guys are recording the bass and the drums for the song. And then I'm flying there next month to California to go record the vocals with Bruce and John Paul together. And we're also going to work on some more new demos, which is pretty exciting. So this is just one opportunity of many that we have going on. And in festival land and touring land, we're now starting to accept more festivals and accept more shows. COVID, like I said, changed some things, and we had to watch what we were doing and where we were going and where we're spending money after years of touring. And so now we're up at a point where we're very excited to announce that we're going to start touring this year. We're going to be doing a few more shows, festivals this summer. And then next year, we're going to be doing a lot more touring, but we're not announcing where and when yet until everything's finalized. So we're pretty excited about the future. It's looking great.
You got to tease us like that? You can't mention
Yeah,
a couple
terrible,
shows?
terrible, terrible.
I'll try to get over it. Well, Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting today. I really appreciate you for sharing your story, behind the scenes insight, and guidance with our community. Before I conclude this episode, is there anything else you would like to share?
No, just I will say though, stay positive. Make sure that regardless of all the chaos and all the terrible things that happen to you, embrace change and just stay positive. That's why we decided to name our band Hello Fiasco, is to make sure that we understand as a band that, hey, this is always going to be a fiasco. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be day-to-day nightmares in any band and any industry. It's no different than any other job. And so you got to just head into the storm and embrace the fiasco, right? So that's my one piece of advice, is stay positive regardless of circumstance. And if your band has enough positive people, because we're all going to be down at times, it's going to vary who's down in the band, then that band will survive and make it to the next show, or make it to the next recording session.
Very well said. I'll have links below for you to get in touch with Eric and Hello Fiasco and stream their album Find the Shoreline. And for you listening in, let Eric be inspiration to yourself that you can 100% achieve your dreams through hard work and investing in yourself and your career. In the meantime, though, that is going to conclude this episode. Until next time, I've been Mac. That's been Eric LaBossiere from Hello Fiasco, and you've been amazing. Take care and keep making music.